proud to announce that I'm joined by Council President Eric Garcetti. We have a few items. Yeah, that's only a few. We only have a few. We have 3 items to discuss. I think we have one item, Ms. Barclay, that shouldn't be controversial. Mr. City Attorney, we will move from this point as a communique from the chair. Ms. Barclay, if you would read item 1.
Meg Barkley with SCLA. Item 1 is a report from the Community Redevelopment Agency and the Chief Legislative Analyst relative to awarding contracts to a pre-qualified list of 28 art consultants.
Okay, so we have no public comment requests on this item and no questions by my colleague. So on item 1, as a communique from the chair, we'll adopt the CLA report. So that brings us to items, are we going to take items 2 and 3 up? No, we don't. Item 2.
Item 2 is a report from the City Attorney and Ordinance relative to amending the Los Angeles Municipal Code relating to evictions for owner, family, or resident manager occupancy under the provisions of the Rent Stabilization Ordinance.
Okay. We have some public comment requests on this item. We have Mr. Larry Gross and Linda Hollenbeck. If you could please come forward. Mr. Gross, what did you do, sleep over so that you'd make sure you were the first card?
Always.
Good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning. Good seeing you. Larry Gross, Coalition for Economic Survival. Wanted to state that this ordinance, for the most part, will provide important added tenant protections and close loopholes that resulted in unjust evictions and affordable housing loss. Thus, we fully support these new tenant protections.
Excuse me?
But that said, it's still hard to justify the reduction in tenant relocation assistance also contained in the new law. You know, on one hand, previously this council moved decisively to protect tenants facing foreclosure evictions, recognizing that these are good tenants who have paid their rent on time, but now find themselves victims of circumstances they haven't created. And then you extended the eviction protections to non-rent controlled units. Thank you, Council Member Garcetti. This ordinance, on the other hand, is somewhat similar. Just because tenants live in a property that's 4 units or less, they could now be punished with reduced relocation assistance. And it's not any easier or cheaper for these tenants to find a new home. We know that the council seeks balanced approaches and faces tough decisions, but in this case, landlords are being favored over low-income tenants who can least afford the reduced relo amounts. As a result, a truly unfortunate and disappointing choice is being made here. But again, we do fully support these tenant protections that are being put in place and hope that more people benefit from these protections than are hurt from the reduced relocation assistance. Thank you.
Thank you, and good to see you, Larry. Ms. Hollenbeck.
Thank
Good morning.
you. Good morning. Morning. My name is Linda Hollenbeck. I'm on the advisory board for California Apartment Association Los Angeles, also with the law firm of Hollenbeck and Cardoso, where we represent landlords, property owners, and management. Basically, to start out very positive, I'm actually delighted to be able to say that 80% of what I read in here, we're really pleased that whose idea this was, really took both sides and tried to be fair. There's certain issues in here, such as if you're the beneficiary of a trust. You know, I had a case last year where we lost in court because the beneficiary of a trust who had 100%, she was the trustee, she was the trustor, she was everything. She was not able to live in property that became hers once her father died. So it's really nice to see these types of changes. It's also nice to see that you put in some restraints with regard to possible fraud, where you're requesting or requiring a certified or licensed doctor in the state of California to certify that somebody is disabled. In past instances, there's been a lot of potential for fraud in this area. So it's really nice to see that these things are done. It's also very nice to see that there is the reduced relocation for somebody with a fourplex. I also had somebody call me up in tears when those relocation fees were raised to $17,000 because she had just purchased a triplex. That was before any changes had been made. She just purchased it with every penny she owned, planning to live in there with her family, and could not afford that additional almost $60,000. So those things are extremely appreciated. The only issues that we find with this that we'd like to change, obviously, are the percentage of ownership. Perhaps if we could make an exception that if the property is wholly owned by family members, regardless of the percentage, that they could either move themselves in or a family member. If I purchased a property with my 3 sisters, I wouldn't be able to live there myself. Or if I purchased it with my 5, cousins, I would not be able to let my children live there. And we do see that as a taking. So we think those things could be changed, perhaps. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no more speaker cards. Mr. Garcetti, did you have a question, or?
I do not.
Then, without objection, we'll adopt the city attorney's report and draft ordinance, and we'll do that as a communique from the chair. Again, thank you. Next, Ms. Barclay.
Item 3 is a motion, Smith, Cardenas, Vine, relative to establishing an economic development department.
Okay, do we have anyone here that can speak to this issue? Okay, Mr. Bimbo? And Avanya, your name has been whispered in my ear by a big bird with a little mustache and a beard. He just whispered again and said that, Avanya, maybe you should give some history on this issue. And good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ivania Salvador with the CLA's office. Just for a little background and history on this issue, the City Council and the city has addressed this issue at various times throughout the 90s as well as in the 2000s under the Reardon administration. I think was the most recent discussion of this issue, but as far back as in the 90s, where it's been contemplating that some type of consolidation for our economic development programs in the city be considered. As part of this, several big studies have been done throughout the city as well that have always concluded that the city needs to look at consolidating its economic development activities in order to better service the community, the business community, and the community in general. The mayor's recently has the Los Angeles Economy and Jobs Committee in 2008. The Council's Business Retention and Attraction Task Force, and the Council's Public Participation Task Force and Economic Development in 2000 all concluded that the city needs to seriously look at its economic development functions and to merge them or consolidate them to better serve. Some of the reasons for consolidation that have been put forward, again, restoring the focus for economic development, accountability, enhancing the quality and effectiveness of our programs, improving our city's image in the community and nationwide as well as internationally, and also it would assist us to leverage our current resources and respond to our business community, our elected officials and our staff. The goals of consolidating would be to reduce administrative and overhead costs, coordinate our human and capital resources and centralize programs and resources, eliminate duplication, et cetera. There's a whole list of things that we can report back on sort of the goals of economic consolidation. Just as a brief sort of major issues that have come up when this item was discussed in the various councils, governance, of course, is big. What kind of a body would oversee this type of a department? The council looked at creating a CDC, which is a Community Development Commission, which would have the oversight function over the redevelopment agency and economic development department. And then later on, again, one of the big issues was housing, if it should be linked in or not to this consolidation of this department. We have also been through these discussions in the budget, have heard the council discuss the BID office and administration, a film czar, international office. And again, there are various departments that we could look at that would, determine how this department would look like and what the governance structure would be. Again, how you decide, where the CRA would fit and what that body would look like. There are various governance structures. We can come back and give you a couple of those so you can look at. Which operations to consolidate. Again, we've talked about, doing a survey in the city and just updating what we have right now. We consider economic development that could be included in some kind of a department or have a commission created to have oversight over this department. One or two departments that, again, is part of the structure. And again, housing. The council discussed various times whether housing or not should be included in this. Again, the issue is there's housing in the CRA as well as we have a housing department. So how do we make sure that we are linking those two and that the housing issues are being considered on both sides of the departments? Personnel is a big issue. The CRA is on a separate personnel track. That's also something that needs to be studied, although I think in conclusion, when we last looked at this, there were some resolutions about how the city can look at personnel and be able to make that work. Workforce investment, the WIB, including the WIB into an economic development program and linking those, but also was suggested and may work in this type of consolidation. So in general, I guess where we are at this point and what's being proposed before you from the Jobs Committee is really to begin to looking at the concept of consolidation of our economic development programs in the city. I don't know if there's a representative from Mr. Smith's office, but...
There is. But before... But anyway, before you get started, we're joined by Council Member Ed Reyes, so we do have a quorum. Mr. City Attorney and Madam CLA would like to put Mr. Reyes on the first two votes unless he has some objection. And if that's the case, then it'll be an action by this committee and not a communique from the chair. Avanya, were you finished?
Yes, just to conclude that, what I wanted to stress is that the staff, the CAO, the CLA, personnel, city attorney, have done a lot of work on this issue already over the years, and if we are to look at this seriously again, I think that there's probably a lot of updating that needs to do, but I think a lot of the groundwork has been done to kind of start looking at if that's the way that the council wanted to go, we would start looking at that.
Okay, I want to ask a question before I want to ask Richard what you think, and Doug afford you the opportunity to earn your pay since you got up so early this morning. And if your boss is listening, I want him to hear your brilliance.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we've seen him.
So he's not. So you know what? You can leave. He's not.
He wanted to be here, but I think he was held hostage, and Councilman Parks has not released him yet. So.
Jeez Louise. Vanya, if we've studied this, I thought I heard you reference at least 2 or 3 studies. And I also thought I heard you say that at the conclusion, it would appear that people thought that this made sense or made some sense. But nothing has happened. So what has the hiccup been?
I think basically it comes down to consensus, at the council level and just in general in the political offices. It never really came to a major conclusion within the city family as to what the department would look like and what the governance structure would be.
Okay, so again,
in general, the different administrations just...
So the devil's in the details. Conceptually, it makes sense, but then how do you act? Okay, Doug, you want to make a statement or?
Just a brief one. My name is Doug Tripp. I'm here representing Councilman Smith today. On behalf of Councilman Smith, I'd like to thank all of the council members for taking up this issue so expeditiously. I think the conversation is one that naturally follows the mayor's plan to have a human services department to talk about consolidation in this very rough budget year. Given the tough choices that we all have to make with the shared sacrifice and responsibility, we think that it's natural to think about, in addition to those sacrifices and the responsibility, things we can do to set ourselves up for success in the future as a city and to leverage the awesome resources that we have in the city, in our personnel, in our departments, in the mayor's office, in order to move forward and to position ourselves well for the next round of growth. And it's something that has, as Ivania pointed out, has been long discussed, and we think the time for it is now. Councilman Smith recognizes all the great work that the city family has done over the years. He's been here to witness it, so that's not in question. I guess the question just is, can we, if we work together, if we break down those silos, can we do more? Can we be better? And how we can leverage all of those remarkable assets in order to move forward and become that great international leader that we are and cement that future going forward. I'm also here today to discuss a little bit, or ask that this be included as well, ask staff to include recommendations that were made in the consideration of this year's budget. Yesterday during the marathon, but this was early, I was still around then, they asked the staff to include consideration of the Office of International Trade and the Office of Small Business in recommendation 1 as well, when we talk about the consolidation going forward. And then finally, our hope is that, we'll find as we sit together through this process, we're not as far apart departmentally speaking as we thought we might be, because we're all in the same business. The goal here is economic development, and we look forward to the process and working with the mayor's office, the other council members, and the community at large to get closer to this goal.
Thank you. That was a pretty good statement. We've been joined by Councilwoman Jan Perry. Mr. Bimbo, your thoughts?
Good morning. Yes, as you know, I've been around for a few years and was at CRA when the initial studies were done, and are quite familiar with the issues that were raised by Ivania. I do want to point out that I'm a member of the Mayor's Economic Development Cabinet, which is convened twice a month and led by Bud Overham. I believe Ms. Hizarick, who is also here, heads up, shares in that responsibility on the housing side. And a lot of what we do in those meetings are actually the goals and objectives that are set forth in the whole idea or concept of having a economic development department, such as coordinating the activities of all the departments that have economic development responsibilities, establishing priorities, and reporting on progress of major projects. So a lot of that work is done within the context of this Economic Development Cabinet. And as I said, we meet twice a month and have formal agendas and whatnot. So a lot of that work is being done by the Cabinet.
Were there projected costs during the studies? How much would it cost to consolidate or create this?
I don't have that before me now. I couldn't. I'm sure there were. I just don't have that with me, Councilman.
Mr. Garcetti, did you have a question?
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And thank you to Councilmember Smith for moving this forward. I guess it was about 4 years early, because it looks like this comes up every 15 years, and he jumped the gun by about 4. But maybe he knows with term limits and all that he has to get it done before he leaves. When I was a professor at Occidental College, I participated in something called the Progressive Los Angeles Network, or PLAN for short, which brought together a lot of thinkers from around the city, practitioners, academics, community leaders. And number 3 on their 21-point agenda was actually the creation of an economic development department. And they proposed, or we proposed at the time, and put this forward to all the mayoral candidates in 2001 who signed off on this. There was, obviously Jim Hahn, Antonio Villaraigosa, and the other three major candidates on the creation of an EDD, and it would have kind of 5 prongs to it: industrial development, commercial development, finance, workforce development, and policy and research. And I think a lot of what the mayor has done has definitely helped us down that road. I would not disagree with what was said, and I think there's been some very able leadership in doing that. I do also think that there's a lot of merit to this, and as we move forward, thinking from the customer standpoint, I think the consolidation has been good on, and the discussion of bringing together all the general managers and others has been good in terms of case managing some big projects, and in thinking policy and strategy. Where we still fall short as a city, and it's very confusing, it's not just economic development, is for the customer out there, where they don't know, do I go to CRA, do I go to planning, I'm having a problem with the county health department on a grease trap. I mean, it's still very torturous. And I think if we all step back and think about it from the who we serve standpoint first, the worker, the business, the big business, et cetera, this has a lot of merit to it, and something that I'm very supportive of, in concept at least, and as we work out some of these details. The reason I know it failed in '85 and failed in '99 is because once that happens, there's a lot of turf here. And Mr. Benbow, I look to you in some ways because you have straddled both the CRA and CDD. In some ways, you've inherited a community development department, just to be blunt, which you've done a great job with, but that it's a multi-headed hydra. I mean, it kind of does workforce development, it does some family development stuff, and we've talked about that. And it takes a lot of leadership, I think, to step forward, for instance, on the reorg, as you've done, and to say, look, we should be better at one thing that we do on family development, and reaching out to family. As we look at consolidation of other departments, like our human relations and our Commission on the Status of Women and some of our other human services piece, that naturally fits in with our kind of family development piece. Our economic development and workforce development does fit in very naturally with our community development work, and our business team work and our council advocacy work. So I think as we go down this path, I would hope that we start not by suspecting one another and not by looking at ways to kill this, but really having an open mind about how we could possibly get there. Because I think those cities where I have seen it it's very customer friendly. It's actually very good for business development. And LA, we are replete with a million ways of killing every good idea that comes forward. And there's only one way to get things done. There's about a million ways to kill this proposal. But I'd like us to continue exploring what the merits of this are. I know it's something that the mayor himself supported in 2001. I know it's something that a lot of people who do this for a living support. There's tough barriers. I mean, CRA law is CRA law, and that's very different than some of our community development stuff. But if we think about not ourselves first, but the people out there first, I think they'd see this, whether it's a single form, a single place to go, a place to find your workforce, as well as your business help, that there's a tremendous amount of merit in it.
Thank you. Before I see if any other members have questions, Linda Smith and Dario Gomez from the mayor's office, you guys want to come and share with us your thoughts, or Helmy, or whoever? Oh no! Wait a minute, Linda. You sat down too quick. I want to make you come up here and you're gonna have to say something. See, now had you not sat back down so quickly? Good morning.
Good morning.
What's the mayor's thoughts on this?
You know what, I'll go first, and then I'll invite Linda and Dario to speak. Helmy Historic, Deputy Mayor. I was originally the Deputy Mayor for Housing and Economic Development Policy, so for the first year I did think a lot about this issue, and the report that was referred to, Los Angeles Jobs and Economy Committee, one of the recommendations was consolidation. The mayor's office, the mayor himself takes that very seriously, is very open-minded about the concept. In fact, the creation of the Economic Development Cabinet was intended to bring together all the departments that do economic development, including, in addition to CDD and CRA and sort of the ones that we know, it also includes the Department of Water and Power, Metro, and the port, some of the, proprietaries that really factor in on strategic thinking on economic development. I think what I would just like to offer to this committee and to the council as a whole is that I enlisted a small team of my policy staff for the first year to take a look at best practices for economic development in major cities nationally. So we have actually done quite an extensive amount of work looking at various ways that it's structured, both within governments as quasi-governmental entities. I think that report is something that we have presented to the general managers for discussion. It was really intended to talk about it with the general managers initially as just what would work, what works for you guys. So we've gotten it that far, and I think it would be something that the mayor's office would be happy to share with the council and let you see. It was the analysis was done by Sean Arian, who was doing our policy work, and it also involved the directors of all of the economic development departments that are in the mayor's office, and 2 of them are here.
Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Linda Smith, and I'm the director of the Los Angeles Minority Business Opportunity Center, which is a program operated out of the mayor's office, and we're part of the Office of Economic Development. And as many of you know, the program is partially funded by a federal grant from the Minority Business Development Agency, which is part of the U.S. Department of Commerce. And we are really on the ground. Our charge is to assist minority businesses actually secure contracts and financing. So we have an annual dollar goal that we have to achieve in order to keep the funding going, and that is $77 million in contracts and $50 million in financing. So we're really working with the business owners, providing that kind of case management, helping them get what the 3 or 4 things that small businesses are most interested when they come to the city, which is procurement, access to capital, and information. And another area is getting through the city's very difficult process of planning and permitting, because small businesses, like even the big businesses, run into real roadblocks and trying to get some of those things done. So what the mayor has done, and we've worked with Sean Arian and everyone, trying to figure out how can we have a more focused approach to working with small businesses out of the Office of Economic Development. And one of the things that came out of that was the mayor has signed off on the concept of creating an Office of Local Small Business. Local small and disadvantaged businesses, building upon the model of MBOC, where we would address the needs of trying to get procurement opportunities for local businesses, because we feel it's an economic development strategy for the city to spend a certain percentage of its procurement dollars with local small business. And we're finding that other cities and other municipalities across the country are now moving to this focus. And we talk about a lot of things, but I think that what I haven't heard is making a commitment of the city to use their procurement dollars, which you already have, and you're going to spend anyway, to have a focus of setting a goal of spending 20 or 25% of those procurement dollars. And the city does spend about $2 billion a year. We got some numbers last year from some of our interns. And so if 25% of that was spent with local small business, we could create our own stimulus plan just here within the city. And so this has kind of been the foundation to kind of create this Office of Local Small Business, to try to, the mayor does plan to develop a new executive directive that would expand the current minority and women-owned outreach policy, which does a great job of outreach and has stood all legal challenges around Prop 209, but it hasn't been successful in getting any much contracts for minority and women-owned businesses. So obviously it's broke, so we need to figure out how to fix it. So that's began the whole dialogue of looking at another way of doing it, and then we found that other cities are using this local small business approach, and it makes sense for us to recycle the dollars that we spend with local small business. The other part of it is obviously, trying to find capital, and the mayor's office, in partnership with Richard Bimbo at CDD, has been able to say that we can carve out up to $15 million of HUD 108 financing to try to maybe design some kind of access to capital or financing program for local small businesses in partnership with local small banks. We're trying to keep everything local. And we have spoken to a couple of banks that think that this co-lending concept is very viable. The third part of the second part of this capital access that really needs to help businesses is prompt payment. Okay? And that it really hurts small businesses. It's difficult to get a contract, and once they get a contract, it takes them forever to get paid. And in this marketplace, and Councilperson Weston knows I'm a former banker. So I understand the need of the working capital and the financing of contracts and receivables. And in this credit crisis, where the businesses are getting their lines of credit cut, where they don't have the financing of the receivables, it's even more critical that they get paid on time. So what we're going to try to recommend, and I don't know if it's possible, how long it will take, but the federal government does have a Prompt Payment Act, where if as long as the business, the small business, satisfies all the documentation requirements to get paid, they are paid within 30 days by wire transfer of those funds to their bank account. So I think that this would go a tremendous way. So, I'm talking about taking policy and actually implementing it where it really does something to the businesses on the ground. And that's really what kind of my role. I love the policy part of it because it's very, it's exoteric, but in the end, you got to take the policy and implement a program. And so those are some of the things. And I think that we recognize that, there's great small business programs across the city, but they're scattered all over the place, and no one knows how to get to them. And that's one of the roles of this new office that's been recognized by the mayor's office, that there needs to be an umbrella that really kind of compiles where all of these programs are, and when small businesses or businesses, period, come to the city, we can drive those clients to those various departments. One thing that has helped that there is a website that the mayor's office put together, the LA Business Solutions, that try to put all of those things on that one website. But a website by itself is not enough. You still need to have some kind of human touch. So that kind of summarizes kind of what my role has been doing to try for our department to be more focused and trying to address this issue of making the city more friendly for small business, who are the engine of job creation within our community.
Well, I'll tell you, for somebody that didn't want to speak, you were definitely prepared to speak without a doubt. Good job.
Thank you very much, Councilman. I'm Dario Gomez with the Mayor's Office of International Trade. The Mayor's Office of International Trade seeks to complement, under the direction of Deputy Mayor Bud Over, what the business team does, only we work with the international constituency. We have three main goals. One of them is to advise the mayor how to position Los Angeles globally and internationally to take advantage of its competitive strengths. Second one is to attract foreign direct investment. And the third one is to assist with local companies in helping them export to overseas markets. When we talk about positioning Los Angeles, we have such a good story to tell in Los Angeles about what we're doing here. And let me give you an example. Our efforts in renewable energy, our efforts in greening Los Angeles have really been universal standards globally. What the Korea Basi did at the convention center is an example of that. And what we try to do is work with the international community through the 99 consulates that we have here, including the trade commissioners, and getting that story out. And the end of it, branding Los Angeles in terms of being a clean tech capital, a green tech capital of the United States and the world. In terms of foreign direct investment, we work with the business team in terms of trying to push through projects that have an international element, either through financing or through an overseas corporation. And so in Councilman Reyes' district, I believe, earlier this year, the Grifols Corporation was an example of what foreign direct investment could create. It was an investment of over $100 million, and I think it's creating over 120 plus jobs in the biotech area. We believe Los Angeles should be the focus of a lot of foreign direct investment into the United States. Other regions around the country are just as competitive, if not more, and aggressive in trying to provide incentives and others for foreign direct investment. And so we have our unit to be competitive. And then finally, in export assistance, we have recently teamed up with Linda Smith and her group to use the tools that we have in the region that are trade resources that are free or very low cost to help companies in the MBOC database to connect with international trade resources so they can eventually export. We're working in conjunction with the port, with the airport, with the Freight Forwarders Association and the Department of Commerce to try to bring trade expertise to MBOC clients and small businesses as well. So at the end of the day, that what we seek to create is an international value for these companies and the international value for Los Angeles.
Well, I want to thank you for coming, and it would appear that we do have a huge challenge before us, but trust me, it's one that I think that we can do if the will is there. Any comments or questions from other members? Ms. Perry?
Yeah, just thanks, Mr. Chair. And I appreciate your comments and Mr. Garcetti's comments, and look forward to the ideas that will be put forth for our review and analysis. But I just want to add my perspective on this. All ideas are good and all ideas have merit, and as long as there's transparency and substance to them, and substance and checks and balances and full disclosure. But what can make an idea work or not work is the one who is at the top of the pyramid and the one who leads it, and that is extremely critical to me. I have watched Mr. Benbow over the years, and I have to say, when he first started, I think this current position, he already had a long career, and he has remade himself yet again into someone who has been tremendously beneficial to work with. He has a good portfolio of deliverables to almost all of the council districts. When you put a project in his pipeline, it usually comes out the other end, and you understand what it means from start to finish, without guile, without political agenda, without confusion or darkness associated with it. It's open, and it's something that I really look forward to having this discussion, and I want to hold Mr. Benbow up as probably a role model for what it means to be a good, straightforward, fully forthcoming general manager who can lead his troops in a way that benefits the people of Los Angeles.
Thank you for that comment. Before we go to Mr. Reyes, I think, Mr. Benbow, I watch these series on television. I buy the complete series, and after what Ms. Perry said, and I watched Supernatural. So it's Supernatural. I guess what Ms. Perry said, you would be a shifter. Okay? So a good shapeshifter. With that said, Mr. Reyes.
Make sure that the pulse on your head.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What I find intriguing is that as a staff person for 10 years working with Councilman Mike Hernandez when he was chairman of economic development, I think there was 2 runs at this effort. In the late 90s, there was another strong push. But what I always find, I say this, when we look at our fiefdom mentalities within our own departments, the fiefdom mentalities of our own departments, and what they control and what they don't control, and how they want to sustain their budgets. And back then we had money. Today we don't have that money. So I think the issue of timing is critical. I really think we're going to have to work backwards in terms of trying to understand what our objectives are going to be. I've been pushing hard for 6 years now to find a way to get the city to understand that jobs for youth, I mean, it's, I keep saying this is my mantra, and I follow Father Boyle's statements, and nothing stops a bullet better than a job. We did a study, about $1 billion worth of contracts get out. that come out of our various departments. And we, I think, bring in something like 20,000 jobs out of those contracts, but not for the city of Los Angeles residents. And so just to try to get that attention and focus today has been tough. So from that point of view, I can see why we need to take this other step. But I think we'll find that the issue of discretion and how it flows into different committees is going to be very critical. I think it's going to be critical how we look at this whole use of our own real estate and our own, the way we control our own property. It came out the article the other day. I mean, I have 5 departments with their own maintenance yards in my district. They each have their own parking station areas. If you look at a map from a shot from above, you're going to see all of this asphalt, unused, underused parking, wasted land that we can be creating jobs. And right next to the river, next to rail stations, and we're sitting on it. And for 15 years, I've been trying to get different department heads to respond to this. And there doesn't seem to be the will, as the chairman has stated, to make that shift and that change, because no one wants to give up their piece of the pie. So if this is going to take to stimulate a different mindset, then let's go down this road, but it's not going to be easy, because every department is going to want to maintain its control. And the discretion of the chair, the discretion of the department heads under the mayor, we're going to have some very interesting discussions. But I think we need to go there and figure out how we're going to find a place to establish the ultimate goal, which is creating jobs for the residents, stimulate this tax base, and make this the international city that it deserves to be. So let's roll up our sleeves.
Well, we like challenges here. Thank you, Mr. Reyes. And there are no other questions or statements, then, well, did you have any? Okay, then without objection, we'll concur in the recommendations of the Jobs Committee with amendments. Oh, you know what, Doug? Didn't you have a suggestion that you wanted to have included?
Yes, I did.
Why don't you, because I'd like to incorporate, why don't you, well, just give it to the clerk. So our amendments that Ms. Barclay is going to read, I want to incorporate what Mr. Smith suggested, and then we'll hold this item in committee and have a report back in 45 days.
Yes, we had an additional recommendation during the budget committee's discussion of the, I believe it was the Community Development Department. It was suggested that as part of this effort, the ultimate structure should also include the transfer of responsibility for preparation of the consolidated plan to the CAO. We would recommend including that also as a consideration for the final structure.
Everything's on the table. Okay, then, are you ready now?
I am ready.
Okay.
I'm just new to the process. We also wanted to include in the first recommendation that came out of the Jobs Committee that was added to the original motion, consideration of the office, including the Office of International Trade and the Office of Small Business Services in the discussion as well.
Done. Okay, then, without objection, that's the order of the day. Ms. Barclay, is there any more business before this committee?
No, sir.
Okay, so before we adjourn, which is the next thing I'm going to say, congratulations are in order to Ms. Perry. She's got a daughter that is college bound, and I caught her off guard. I had an opportunity to see her again Sunday. And boy, they change quickly. But anyway, congratulations. So with that said, this committee is. Can I announce that?
No. People may. No, there may be UCLA people.
Okay, so in order to protect the privacy of the Perry family, we will not announce which university she's been accepted to. So,
We'll just do this.
Yeah. So without objection, this committee's adjourned. Yeah.